Now, I want to end this recap of Mulvey by considering a number of responses that we might make to Mulvey's article. Some of them have been made in the history of film theory, and some of them I'm offering just as hypothetical responses to Mulvey to complicate and enrich her arguments. The first one is about the status of your argument about Vertigo. We might say, after watching Vertigo and discussing it, isn't Vertigo about the male gaze instead of being symptomatic of the male gaze? Mulvey actually acknowledges in one sentence in her essay that these films seem to be reflexive. She might say, consider just how much this film thematizes the concerns of my essay, like to be looked atness and the idealization of woman as image. So we might say, how is Vertigo acknowledging or creating a situation in which these notions in her essay are thematized, like presented in a way for us to contemplate them? Think about this scene where Scotty is following Madeline into the museum. So one of the things I wanted to think about with this sequence is simply, what does it mean to watch this for the first time versus when you watch this again, knowing the narrative? I think it becomes very apparent that when we watch it for the first time, we might be synced up with Scotty. We might be interested in the very things that he looks at as details in his investigation, right? We get these moving POV shots of him looking at the details of the relationship between her and the portrait of Carlotta Valdez. The camera movement seems to get us very much involved in that cognitive activity of piecing two things together. But consider this image after we've watched the film and we know the narrative. Now we might think about the layers of presentation that Madeline is conscious of, right? Because after all, she is not actually obsessed with Carlotta Valdez. She is not possessed by Carlotta Valdez. This is all a fiction that she is participating in. And so she has actually presented herself in this very particular position to be looked at. In other words, she is not just to be looked at in the narrative, she is consciously performing to be looked atness for Scotty. In other words, you could say that this film thematizes to be looked atness as a condition of classical Hollywood storytelling, where women are presented as images, images whose sole existence is to serve as spectacles for the male gaze, right? See, once we think about the layers of construction that Elster is constructing Judy, who is constructing Madeline, who herself constructs the idea that Madeline is possessed by Carlotta, we can't simply think about this as a symptom of the male gaze. We might think of this as reflexive on the very things that Mulvey looks at. How else is this film also about woman as image and not just symptomatic of the way in which women are treated as images to be consumed by male spectators and male characters? Well, think about this moment. Madeline is seen or imagined as a portrait. I think it's very important that we have this motif of portraiture, of looking at someone from profile. That's a very kind of painterly, pictorialist way of representing a human figure. And the perfection with which we get a 90-degree view upon her seems to call our attention to the idea that this frame is giving us an image, not just a view upon the character played by Kim Novak. Also, Madeline displays herself surrounded by flowers. Think about the scene in the movie where we open the door and we get this wash of color, right? Madeline is consciously displaying herself adorned by the spectacle of color. Her image is something that isn't just constructed by the film, it's something that she is herself constructing because after all, she's in on this presentation. Scotty recreates Madeline as an artificial construct, right? He himself, quite literally, is trying to build an image, right? Madeline, after all, is not a real person. She is a performed character, and he has fallen in love with a performed character. If anyone's closer to real, it's this brunette Judy, who is from Kansas, and who is not as refined and is not a platinum blonde. He is trying to create an image and instill it into an actual person. When Judy as Madeline is created, she's ghost-like and ethereal. She is not material, right? She seems to be as an image. Just think about what the haziness of the fog seems to do to this picture. It makes her like a picture. A ghost is like an immaterial image of a human being, something that doesn't have flesh and blood. When they kiss, reality falls away. We're always mixing the real thing with its image or its fantasy or its impression. And finally, Scotty recognizes the Carlotta necklace in the mirror, triggering his memory of the painting. In other words, it's important that he actually looks at Judy in a mirror, kind of image-making device, and just thus triggering the memory of the painting. In other words, there's a very hazy connection between Judy, Madeline, of the portrait of Carlotta. These are all kind of images in a way. We might consider this sequence as well as thematizing this idea of woman as ideal image, woman as manufactured by men. And what I love about this opening sequence is when we watch the movie for the first time, this scene seems very boring and like it seems very detached from the film as a whole. But when we go back and watch it again, just notice how much of the dialogue actually thematizes these issues and brings them down to earth. So let me stop my image and play this and maybe stop it at certain moments.
Ouch! I thought you said no more aches or pain.
That's this darn corset. It binds.
No three-way stretch? Very un-chic.
Yeah. Well, those police department doctors, no sense of style. Well, anyway, tomorrow will be the day.
Why, what's tomorrow?
Tomorrow. The corset comes off tomorrow. I'll be able to scratch myself like anybody else tomorrow. I'll throw it.
He's in a corset, right? He is in an object generally associated with feminine clothing. He feels emasculated both by that piece of clothing that serves a medical purpose and the fact that he is rendered immobile in some minute sense by his injury. Meanwhile, Midge is drawing. She's working on a design for an advertisement for a bra.
I know. I have acrophobia, which gives me vertigo, and I get dizzy. Boy, what a moment to find out I had it.
Well, you got it, and there's no losing it. And there's no one to blame. So why quit?
You mean to sit behind the desk, chairborne?
Where you belong.
What about my acrophobia? What about... Now, suppose I'm sitting in this chair.
So notice just how much this resembles Rear Window. He's afraid of sitting at a desk. He has an affliction. He feels as if it has in some way compromised his masculinity.
Behind the desk, here's the desk. And a pencil falls from the desk down to the floor. I reach down to pick up the pencil. Bingo, my acrophobia is back.
Oh, Johnny-o. Well, what do you do?
Well, I'm not going to do anything for a while. You know, don't forget, I'm a man of independent means, as the saying goes. Fairly independent.
Why don't you go away for a while?
You mean to forget? Oh, no, Midge, don't be so motherly. I'm not going to crack up.
Have you had any dizzy spells this week?
It's established right in this opening scene that Midge is a kind of mother figure to counterbalance the kind of femme fatale vamp, right? The erotic figure of Madeline, right? They enhance each other's feminine stereotypes by both existing in this universe.
What's this doohickey?
It's a brassiere. You know about those things. You're a big boy now.
Never run across one like that.
Also notice the way in which Midge's figuring as mother risks emasculating Johnny by referring to him as a child. You're a big boy now. But this is actually the sequence with the bra is the thing that I wanted to get at with this notion of women as ideal image as manufactured by men.
It's brand new. Revolutionary uplift. No shoulder straps, no back straps, but does everything a brassiere should do. Works on the principle of the cantilever bridge.
Does?
Mm-hmm. An aircraft engineer down the peninsula designed it. He worked it out in his spare time.
Kind of a hobby.
So Just think about this, like this really strange detail, right? Hitchcock is known for being meticulous with what he's shooting in his movie. So why would you have this detail where both characters stop and admire the engineering of a bra? It seems rather incongruous with the film. But take this notion that they're looking at a garment that is associated with constructing the ideal image of female beauty, and then it's designed by a man. So we have this film, which is literally about a man redesigning a woman, that is creating Madeline through the artificial making of Madeline with clothes and hair and imposing that onto the body of Judy. And we have a more ordinary version of that through this idea of a revolutionary bra that was worked out in his spare time by a male engineer. So that was number one. Just to say that Vertigo is conscious of these very things. It doesn't exonerate it from any claims that it might be a misogynist film or a patriarchal film, but it does seem to be something that enriches our understanding of those ideological structures by investigating it. So number two,